Morning, Warriors, and welcome to Why Shy Why episode 42, I think it is week. This is the first one for 2017 that I'm recording, so Happy New Year to you guys. Thank you for joining me because it's going to be a huge year this year. I wanted to start off, guys, by a hashtag that came out last week, a couple of days ago actually. Hashtag NotMyDebt. You might have heard about it. If not, stick around because I'm going to take the next 5 minutes to quickly go through what happened, because at the end of the day, it was a technological issue. Okay, guys, so let's get into hashtag NotMyDebt. NotMyDebt came out a couple of days ago, and what it started with was an employee of Centrelink that wrote an anonymous letter and basically whistleblew on a certain amount of practices that were happening in Centrelink that basically overinflated the debt that people owed back to the government. Now, this debt was calculated using computer algorithms, right? And the problem has come out that they weren't necessarily sensitive to the human condition, so to speak. Centrelink, for those guys who don't understand, is it's basically a social security agency in Australia. And what they do is provide you with cash for things like, workplace, for training to find a job or for education, basically anything that can get you back into a role. Now, when that stops, when you find a job, you're supposed to tell Centrelink and then they stop those payments. Sometimes those things don't happen in time. You might forget for 6 months. Sometimes you might forget for 2 days. Whatever the case might be, you then owe a debt back to the government via Centrelink. What Centrelink does and has been doing is in a new, well, not new, but relatively new software program, they use algorithms to calculate the debt of individual citizens. Now, what's been happening is they use very simple algorithms to calculate very complex situations. So, what will happen is, for example, I might be unemployed for 6 months, okay? And in that 6 months, I've been taking Centrelink cash and being able to live based on that. So that's great. Social Security is brilliant. But after 6 months, I get a job. And after that time, I might, after say 4 weeks, so fortnightly pays, I then tell Centrelink that I've actually got a job, and what will happen is the algorithm will kick in, and it'll say something like, "Oh, okay, so you've got a job now, and we've paid you this much, and we're just gonna maybe multiply this by 26 to give you an annual debt." Now, that's a really silly example, but that's the kind of thing that's happening. That exact example is not happening, but there are more complex reasons for that. Now, what's happening, guys, is everyone's getting a little bit upset over this, and I can understand why, because now you have people that owe money to Centrelink, aka the government, but the government is not actually owed that money, right? So what's happening is you've got debt collectors going out there and assaulting people and saying, "Listen, we need your cash." And the people are like, "Look, I don't understand. Maybe it's too hard. Okay, take my money." So far to date, I'm just looking at this number as it ticks over on the website, $2,313,147 worth of unsubstantiated debt has been identified. Now that freaks the hell out of me, because that means that what will happen is this debt basically makes up the budget, the Australian government federal budget. So when we start thinking about, wait a minute, how much of this debt? So I think they were saying something along the lines of 4 billion over the next 3 years is what they expect to recoup. What if half of that, or even 10% of that 4 billion, is not real debt? And if that's the case, then what are we going to lose from our budgets? Is it going to be healthcare? Is it going to be social security? Is it going to be education? How are they going to pay for these policies if they no longer have the cash to account for it? Worry, yes. Okay, but I'm not here to talk about social constructivism. What I want to talk about is the tech behind this, okay? Guys, this happens all the time, and the reason it happens all the time is because life is so complex. Everyone, especially when it comes to government departments, you would have seen this in, the census recently went down and had issues with that. There was a huge payroll issue with Queensland Health a few years ago. This continues to happen. It doesn't just happen in government, by the way. It just happens to show up in government because of the transparency laws we have in place. But it happens in industry all the time. It happens in private sector. It happens in non-profit. I see it, and we come in to fix it sometimes. It's a huge worry. But the reason why this is happening, guys, is because we're too quick to sign off on the project plans and just get this thing in, right? That's the problem. No one's ever actually testing the full capacity of systems going into places like Centrelink. No one's doing that because it costs a lot of money. No one's doing that because it's already, 2 years overdue and delayed, and we don't have the budget for it. Those sort of things are continuing to happen, not because Centrelink's at fault here, not because their contractor's at fault, whoever that was, I don't know who that was, but it's because we're not understanding that the way to manage a software project is way different from managing any other project in the world. I even mean technology in terms of hardware is a different project methodology from software. Now, I personally, obviously, I like the agile route because it means that you're always checking in, right? So in this case, you'd go to a senior executive at Centrelink and say every 2 weeks, hey, are we on track? Are we on track? Are we on track? So when you get to the point where you're about to deliver this thing in its whole, people are already using it because they've been using bits and pieces as they go, and people have already done conditional approvals as they've been using it. And because we're already in a development phase, anything that's wrong spins back around and people fix it, and developers fix it, and goes back into production, and so on and so forth. So guys, you can't really blame the government so much, but you do need to think that, well, this is the sort of thing that I say means makes it sound like the IT sector is just not professional, and that annoys the hell out of me. Okay guys, that's enough for today. I'll leave you with this one thought. There used to be a saying a few years back, no one ever got fired for bringing in IBM. I'd love to hear your comments on that, because I kind of don't believe it. Thanks for hanging out, guys. We'll see you next week. In the meantime, enjoy.